what we're doing here, everyone, is basically we're gonna rank all the combat systems from AC1 to Valhalla. So as I said before, I'm not gonna extend myself too far. I'm really gonna talk about the essentials of the combat and what I think about them. And also, I'm not gonna compare, for example, I'm not gonna compare the combat systems from Origins, Odyssey, or Valhalla to, let's say, AC1. You know, it just doesn't make sense because the combats have like different ideas. So it's just like useless to compare them both. It doesn't matter. So let's start with the first game, obviously, Assassin's Creed 1. Honestly, at the time, I loved the combat system, even though it's not a very complex combat system. You have the classic counter moves. You can do the combos where you attack, and as soon as the sword hits the defender's sword, you click it again, and then it does the combo move, the combo kill, let's say. There wasn't too much to it. You had your short blade, you had the long sword. There was not too many things to do with it, but the animations were pretty cool, and the sound design was actually pretty incredible. The bones breaking and the swords hitting the flesh and the armor, it's pretty great. So I think to start, we should start with Assassin's Creed 1 at the middle tier, right? So we're just gonna put it on the middle tier, just so like we can move them around later, but I think Assassin's Creed 1 sets like the standard base of it. That's essentially what I think of Assassin's Creed 1 combat. It's the essentials, okay? It's the first iteration of the video game. Like, we can't ask for more, really. So, and next, Assassin's Creed 2. Now, Assassin's Creed 2 did a lot of great things, but also took a step back in some regards. Assassin's Creed 2, we had a lot more weapons. We could disarm guards and use their weapons against them, but the sound design, I think, suffered a little bit. In my opinion, I had a bunch of fun in Assassin's Creed 2, and I think essentially what I'm trying to say is Assassin's Creed 2 did improve a lot of things. It did improve a lot of things, even though the sound design stepped back a little bit. So I have to put it on an above level from AC1. Okay, so because the game is still it's very much same-ish, but I really love the disarm mechanic, and I had a bunch of fun with it. In the game, there's more variety of enemies as well. So yeah, I gotta place it above Assassin's Creed 1. Next comes Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Okay, so everyone, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood to me was mind-blowing at the time. Okay. Like the whole system with the chain kills was pretty great. Like, it's like in terms of gameplay, yeah, it takes away from me. Like, I'm just like mashing the square button or the X button, but honestly, I really enjoyed it. And you know, like, it made the Assassin's Creed brand unique. Sort of like it was already unique, but it was kind of like the AC thing, right? You know, it wasn't for everyone. The disarms are still there. And you have the chain kills, which just make you feel like a badass. You know, that's the best thing about it, is that you actually feel like a trained assassin and a trained fighter, right? And the game was actually pretty challenging because Ezio is not a tank. Like in later games, we're tanks. We can take hits all day, but Ezio was like a glass cannon. So honestly, I'm gonna repeat myself. We can't really compare. For example, I'm not gonna compare these ones, the later ones, with these because it's not fair. It's not the same idea. So I think for the classic, let's call it the classic era, the classic era of AC, I think Brotherhood honestly deserves to be on an S tier, like the above tier, because it was just that good, in my opinion, of course. For obvious reasons, I mean, Revelations is pretty much the same thing as Brotherhood. Let's say, like, same thing. You know, like, it's just you have different tools. You can still call your assassin buddies, and Ezio was more experienced. The animations change, but the combat is still essentially the same. And, you know, we're comparing similar experiences. So, like, on that basis, I think being so similar to Brotherhood, I think we also have to put it up on the S tier, in my opinion. Yeah, Maximo, that is a really good pointing out, and that's one of the things that makes it still be an S tier combat, because it's very similar with a few additions. So I think it still deserves to be on an S tier, definitely. All right, so next up, we arrive at what I essentially call a new era for Assassin's Creed, right? Assassin's Creed 3. Now, I know a lot of people do not like this game. I absolutely love the game. The gameplay of this game is absolutely amazing, okay? I absolutely love the combat. Connor is just so brutal. You know, the rope dart is the rope dart. It's not a rope dart, but you know, the thing. It's the same thing as the rope dart, unless it's the same name. Unless the rope dart is named the same thing. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, all of these combats, the new era of AC after AC Revelations, they all played the same, right? The combat was essentially the same. It's hard for me to classify them all. Like, I can start nitpicking them all, and I think you have to think about it. Assassin's Creed 3, Liberation, Black Flag, and Rogue are all so similar that essentially what you're doing is like, how are you gonna rank these, you know, these combat systems? I'm trying to decide where to put everything now, because I think now we're getting to a point where as technology improves, we need to start putting things a little bit down. So Assassin's Creed 3 for me is an amazing experience. I absolutely loved it. Liberation is very, very, very interesting, because I think Liberation deserves to be on an S tier. Why? You have a lot of things that you can do in that game that no other game has. You know, using the whip in the middle of the combat and the animation. First, the animations are very similar to Assassin's Creed 3. You know, Aveline is a beast, and Aveline using her whip is a badass. And using the whip in the middle of the fight, doing the multi-kill system those are great additions to the game that no other game has in this era. So I think for Liberation, I think it deserves to be on the S tier. For Black Flag, please don't kill me, is that I have a small nitpick, okay? Oh no, Mel, please, please no. but basically, the Black Flag for me, it's a tough one, because it's down to the animations. Every copy of Assassin's Creed Black Flag that I've ever owned, PS4, Xbox 360, and PC, the animations are so weird. Like, it's not the animation itself, but it's the sound and the animation don't match. It's so weird. Like, the games, I don't know if it's the engine, the way they did things. I honestly, I don't know, okay? I honestly don't know. And it's a small nitpick. The combat is still great. I still love it, but it's something that is always bugged me about, like, especially when Edward, like, does a kill move and he does, like, 5 slashes and you can hear the slashes going, or you can see Edward slash the sword, but you don't hear anything. To me, it happened a lot. It's the thing that I remember most about the game, honestly. Black Flag, ever since like Xbox 360, at the time I played it, it had the bug. On PS4, it had a bug, and on PC, which I thought was gonna be the best port, it didn't have the bug. So for entertainment purposes only, I'm just gonna place them here, okay? Black Flag and Rogue, because both of those games had the issue. So I'm sorry, Mel. I'm sorry, but just for entertainment purposes only. We can't have all S tiers, okay? Now, we get to Unity, which is very, very, very interesting. I loved Unity's combat, even though I understand why some people hate it. Like, I understand. I totally understand. Arno, like, controls like a tank, okay? You feel heavy. You don't feel like an assassin. The animation system it's so weird because you click on the attack button and the animation needs to play out before you can do something else, and then you get hit a lot. I understand why people hate the combat, but I feel like Unity had a really good idea that maybe with more work put into it could have been something amazing. And I can't really be unfair here. I think Unity, in my heart, Unity is an S tier, but I think it has flaws, okay? Like, even that I love it, can see the flaws pretty clearly. So it to me, it goes on the A tier. Like, it can't, I want to give it an S from my heart, but I just can't because I can see the problems it has, you know? Yeah, it can be frustrating sometimes. And yes, it looked amazing, but that's the thing. Look at Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is also very heavy on the animations, but it gives you a little bit more freedom. I think they worked the engine a little bit more, and they got to a point where it's pretty smooth. Even though it's animation heavy, you still have agency. Like, you can still attack, see an attack coming, and roll back or dodge or whatever, right? All right, Syndicate. Oh boy. Oh boy. Syndicate. Okay, so where do I start with Syndicate? Like, I don't like it. I'm sorry, but I don't like it. Like, Walshy said this perfectly, that Assassin's Creed Syndicate's combat is like killing someone with your car keys. because it is. I'm sorry. You're stabbing people like 50 times before they die. And then if you want to do a multi-kill, you need to drop everyone to no health, right? And they're just there, like, they're just like stunned forever near you until like they fall down. But it's like, yeah, that's exactly it. The animations were like super cartoonish. It's really weird. Honestly, what I felt in the game was that I was just like mashing the button as fast as I could, because, you know, like, I don't want to be in combat forever. Like, I want to kill the enemies, and I felt like in Syndicate sometimes they took a little while. So you just mash because you want to kill them fast. You mash the button, and sometimes what the character is doing, either Jacob or Evie, it's weird. It's not consistent, right? Sometimes it's a kick, sometimes it's a punch, sometimes it's a stab, sometimes it's a knee to the head. Like, it's inconsistent and it's weird, even though the animations are pretty good. So on that basis, to be fair, I think honestly Syndicate deserves to be on a B, right? For me, Syndicate was a very big step back, in my opinion. Sadly, I wanted it to be better. We're going over to a new era of Assassin's Creed, what I like to call the Witcher style Assassin's Creed. The Witcher RPG open world style of video game. Now, these are the only games that can compare between themselves. We're not going to compare between these games right here. So remember that. Always isolate the list from each era of Assassin's Creed. So, Origins. For me, I'm just going to be straight up. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Assassin's Creed Origins, for me, had the best combat out of all of these three, in my opinion, obviously. Like, it was very simplistic, but it worked. It had a flaw that has plagued Odyssey and Valhalla as well, which is your character is just super floaty. And what floaty means is, let's say you're aiming a bow, right? You're aiming a bow and you walk. If you notice, Bayek is like walking super fast, and you can compare this, for example, in Ghost of Tsushima, right, where you're defending or you're aiming a bow, you walk slower, right, because it's supposed to be like, you're supposed to be focusing on your target, and you're supposed to be, you know, in combat. You're not like running around everywhere. And Origins was a little bit floaty. I mean, all of these three games are floaty as hell. But to me, I think Origins was the one that complemented Assassin's Creed more out of all of these three. It was very simplistic, but it worked, okay? There were no sponges. There were no like unfair enemies. It just worked. It was like almost like an Assassin's Creed 2 style of combat, right? And I think in this list, in this new era of Assassin's Creed, I think honestly, Assassin's Creed Origins deserves the S tier, okay, in terms of combat, in my opinion. The bosses are still there, but I think it deserves still to be on. I don't think they're as egregious as the other two, so. Okay, so this leads us to Odyssey, right? And if you know me, you think that I'm just gonna bash Odyssey, but this is a combat system ranking, okay? You gotta remind yourselves that this is a combat system ranking. So to me, Odyssey, it was a really, like, in the middle of the game, like at the middle of the game, I was having a lot of fun with the combat. Reason why: at the middle of the game, the curve for like sponginess of enemies really flats out, so enemies are not as spongy, so they behave almost like Origins enemies, right? Because the curve just flats out, and then when you get into the late game, they start getting, you know, it starts ramping up the health, and you don't do as much damage as you should, and enemies start sponging out a little bit. Odyssey introduced abilities, which, I mean, it's something that for Assassin's Creed, I don't see that it fits. In my opinion, it doesn't fit the game. I have actually a video. You're gonna see a card right there. You're gonna see a card right there in this video. You're gonna see a card for AC Talks, the combat system, where I talk about why abilities don't really work unless they're done a specific way. And the bosses, exactly. That's the thing in the bosses. The bosses are just way too much, in my opinion. Like, and I honestly, and this is what I wanted to say before, Mel, I think with Odyssey, I don't know if anyone feels this, but I honestly think this, especially now that I'm playing Horizon Zero Dawn. I think Ubisoft wanted to incorporate and sort of like copy and emulate like the Witcher style video game, Horizon Zero Dawn, specifically because the way the bow works. The bow in Assassin's Creed Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla is just so overpowered that it's like, it feels like they're trying to, you know, I don't know, like maybe capture players that loved Horizon Zero Dawn and bring them over to AC and be like, hey, you like bows? Here it is. I don't know. I have a feeling that it might have been an inspiration. Some abilities worked well, other abilities didn't work like at all, in my opinion. One of the weirdest things to me has to be the special attack that you do where Cassandra just like stabs the guard like 10 times and the guard is still like half HP. So that combat system, like for some people might be something that is very good, but I really dislike that stuff. So I honestly, I have to put it here on the middle tier. Like for me, I dislike it almost as much as Syndicate. I'm really not playing an Assassin's Creed game to be fighting dudes for 30 minutes. I think it still brought over a lot of qualities from Origins, and it's still very similar to Syndicate in the sense that Syndicate, the combat enemies felt like tankier because of the combat system being that weird and having to chip away at an enemy's health. And Odyssey feels the same way, where I'm spending a lot of time in combat like where I don't want to. So since this is like a combat tier list, I'm just gonna leave it at the same level as Syndicate. I think that's fair. And now, interestingly enough, we're gonna do Valhalla. Oh boy, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. What does Locust think about that, huh? All right, so Valhalla, I'm really conflicted. Valhalla, you know, if they went more in the direction of Origins, it would have been, I think, very good. They decided to implement the abilities, which, I mean, the abilities, I don't like them. I really don't like them. I don't think they fit in Assassin's Creed. You can see it in my video in a AC Talks combat system where I go over why the abilities in Assassin's Creed Valhalla don't work. It's because they feel like you're trying to use your abilities as finishers instead of like complementing the flow of combat, right? So instead of like doing light, heavy, then doing an ability that interrupts their attack and then you can start over the combo again, The abilities don't do that. If you kick the guy gets flown over to Greece and you need to run all the way up to him. The stomp feels weird. I don't know. It's all over the place, and Valhalla left me really conflicted. The boss battles are still there. I think Ubisoft still doesn't know how to do boss battles. They really should take a look to why do boss battles work in Dark Souls and Sekiro and stuff like that. They should really look as the deep reason why they work, and not just the superficial reason, like, oh, it's just a big boss, right? Just a big boss with big health that doesn't attack, right? No, they have phases, they have different attacks, they react to your attacks as well. It's not just like superficial stuff. So I think Ubi still hasn't gone there. Like they need more work on that. So, you know, that being said, I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that they included a lot more enemies. It's a plus. A lot more enemies. Enemies behave differently. Some are annoying as Jesus Christ, some are so annoying, but it's still a plus in my book. I'm really conflicted because if the game was a little bit more, you know, stable, I don't think the game is stable enough to support the combat. And you know, like I've tried, like I'm a combat junkie, and I've tried so many times to make like gameplay clips of Valhalla combat looking cool, and it's just like it just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen because there's bugs constantly happening, breaking the pace of the fight, or an animation, you know, jittering weirdly. Boss fights are not very cool. The stun attacks are a cool idea, but poorly implemented in the way that the camera moves as well. The camera moves a lot. So like if you want to do like a swift move, like imagine Ghost of Tsushima, right? You're doing like a montage of kills and everything. If you want to do like Ghost of Tsushima, the kills, they don't move your camera to adjust the kill, but Valhalla always moves the camera around for you. And if you're doing a lot of kills, you know, like all the time, oh boy, that is gonna suck, especially if you can get dizzy easily. You're gonna get dizzy. That's for sure. So I think I'm decided. I'm still gonna put it on the C tier, honestly. I think the combat really dipped that low. If the game was a little bit more stable, if the game had less bugs and everything, I would probably prop it up to an A. But currently, as the game stands now, there's a lot of bugs that interrupt the flow of combat, and it feels bad most of the time, at least for me. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for being here. You on YouTube, everyone say hi to YouTube. Hey, if you want to watch more of this stuff, I stream on Twitch regularly on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and usually weekends, Saturdays or Sundays, mostly Sundays. So say hi to these beautiful people and come join us.